No, you'll clean it.
What about you? So I talked a little bit about mine. What about you?
Okay. Let me go into. I have like per place. I have a few stories.
Okay.
So I could probably go into one place and just like get as much out as I can. Feel free to ask questions. So I worked at a breakfast restaurant for I think like 3 years. This was still when my flesh woman was like kind of younger. So it was a great job because you could work the weekends, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. or like, let's say 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. You walk out of there, you got some cash tips, you work your ass off. It's one of those jobs, breakfast restaurants, where they move really quickly. So as long as you're, just out of there, you get your stuff done. In the summer, I would get the 5 a.m. shift.
Oh.
So you walk in, you're alone, you open everything, you buy newspapers. Yes, at that time, you bought newspapers for people to read. And I'd be out of there by like after the lunch rush, noon, 1 a.m., made a bunch of money,
That's
go
so
out in the summer with my friends.
Yeah.
That being said, I have learned some tea about franchising. I don't know if anybody here knows what franchising is, but very quickly. So, for example, you can own a McDonald's. You can own a Tim Hortons. Basically, you will buy a store from them. Sometimes it depends on the places, but they'll usually cost you between like 150,000 to maybe $1 million, depends on the place.
Holy moly.
Yeah. But did you know when you franchise something, you have to buy their branded everything? Let me explain.
Okay.
Breakfast restaurant, you couldn't just go buy your eggs at the grocery store for grocery store price. You had to buy their branded chocolate chips, coffee, coffee things. And it costs way more. That's how they get you. So your profit margins are way smaller. So when the place that I was working on got franchised, meaning somebody bought it to be its owner, they often did a lot of shady stuff where if we would run out of eggs, they'd like buy a little bit of eggs. But you never knew when the inspector would come. So they would always have to be like, so for example, the boss worked at the kitchen. They were there 12, like I think we were open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. They were there 7 days a week. Because they would try to buy all the like cheaper eggs, cheaper milk, cheaper chocolate chip, cheaper apples, cheaper everything. And they had to be there in case an inspector came. So they knew how to like,
get around,
hide it, maybe put it in the office, things like that. So I've said this story before on stream, but I want to say it. So, usually a lot of these places have regulars that come usually at lunchtime or in the mornings. And in the mornings, things tend to be a little bit cheaper. Like usually you have like the early bird specials before 9 a.m. This old lady would come in and she would basically put 4 quarters on the table because her meal at the early bird special, I think she got like a coffee and a piece of toast with jam. So it was maybe like $3.50, right?
Yeah.
And she would leave me 25 cents, which 4 quarters. So $1 tip on $3.50, amazing. Like, whatever. But what she would do is the first time you ever had her as a customer, she would come up to you and be like, she would point to her coffee cup and she'd point to about 3/4 of the way with her finger. She had these really long nails with a bunch of rings. And she would say, make sure my coffee never goes below this line. And what she would do is, let's say then you get busy and you're walking around with a coffee pot and maybe you didn't.
Quarter?
She would every single time that you did it, every time her coffee dropped below that line and you didn't refill her coffee, she would take a quarter off.
Oh my God.
Out of your little pile of quarters.
It's like a video game.
I remember talking about this with my flesh mother at the time and I was like, how can somebody be so comically evil? And that's when my flesh mother was like, explaining to me that some people are just bored. To some people, this is like the most fun. Like to her, that's her daily like fun. She goes out and terrorizes young waitresses.
It's also like a control thing though, right?
It is.
Too, like, yeah.
She must have been freaky in the bedroom.
I bet. Probably was just like, I guess another quarter for less for you.
I'm telling you, like she very, and like if you, obviously I wouldn't like try to talk to her about it or anything, but she would just like, sometimes I'd hear her talk about it with like, her husband or anything. And she would just be like, well, I just got to teach people like it's the work ethic.
Oh no.
You just got to teach people how to work hard. You just got to, and again, she's allowed to do what she wants. I one thing I want to quickly say, because I know we're going to have people talk about tips since I brought it up. I have worked for tips. A lot of my stories are about work at a club, at a restaurant, at a bar. I've worked really hard. I've made a lot of money. Even as somebody who has worked a lot for tips, I believe instead you should just pay waiters a little bit more money and we should just not have tips. As somebody who has worked pretty much like my young adulthood for, that, I think it's just easier that way. Genuinely.
And for
I think
people-
everybody should just work harder and do their stuff. By work harder, work their job better, do their stuff, not expect tips.
Right. And then for people outside of like, North America that don't really do tips, like I think, it's hard to explain tip culture, like it's so ingrained that it's like, even now it's kind of a touchy subject, so I don't want to get too much into it. But it's like, you kind of almost anywhere you go now, like it'll be like, okay, decide a tip. And
It's gotten bad. Like you get a coffee and it's like, leave a 25% tip. And you're like, well, okay.
I've seen
I
places
guess.
that will like switch up the numbers so that like the 25% is usually where like, the lower one is or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's, and like, I do tip because, I understand that the people working are not making, the what they need to live on, because that's how the tipping culture works. But it is quite, it's gotten a little insane with some.
It is starting to change a little bit in Canada. And I know this because I live kind of between two major cities. And when I go visit either of those major cities, there's a lot of restaurants now that will say, we do not do tip here, but we have our menu prices a little bit more expensive. And I try to go to those restaurants more because I'm like, okay, I like this. I want to keep supporting this. Let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
But back to this breakfast restaurant.
Yeah.
So the manager that basically we got an owner, and I'm calling him a manager, but he was the owner when he started franchising the place. He franchised the place, and he basically, the first thing, unfortunately, that happens anytime a new owner or a new boss comes in. Is they'll usually pick a fight with everybody. I don't know why it is the way it is.
Really?
Maybe you guys could explain it to me. I've noticed that like almost every time you get a new boss or new management, they kind of come in, they're like, this is my way or the highway.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they are correct that things need to change, but sometimes it's like, hey, this waiter has worked here for 12 years. So a lot of waiters that work breakfast restaurants, they're lifers. They have been there since they were 20. Now they're 45 and they're going to retire with this job. They know every single customer. They know every single thing. They know how it's going to work. And if you try to change things too dramatically, it does not work.
Not good, yeah.
But basically this manager, what he would do is you're supposed to, in Canada, if you fire somebody, let them know, especially if they worked, I think, longer than 6 months at the place, because then you're kind of a little bit more protected. The manager would just take us off the schedule.
Oh my God.
Or they like wouldn't update the schedule till Sunday late at night, and they would schedule you on the Monday morning. And if you don't know, well, then they'd be like, oh, you were late to your shift. So now you're fired. Like I remember it was really toxic with this manager. He fired so many people by just taking them off the schedule.
Oh my God. How are you going to run a place if you were going to fire everybody? Like,
because like you just get more people, right? It's you just do that. You just get more people.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So when they franchised, did they acquire a different business to become, or did they like?
No, so it was already that business. It was already, let's just say it's a McDonald's. It was already a McDonald's, and then somebody bought and franchised it. So they're like, okay, you can have this McDonald's. Like McDonald's will no longer own it. Now you own it, but now you report directly to McDonald's.
Okay.
So it's your thing, but you have to do everything McDonald's menu, everything McDonald's stuff.
Okay. I like understand it. Like when you like when they're just like you have to buy the branded stuff. Like I get the thought behind it, because it's just like you go to a McDonald's and everything, no matter where it is,
and you
tastes
expect
the
McDonald's
same.
quality. Yeah, that's the whole point.
McDonald's quality, like it's gourmet. Like yes, my fries are not.
I love my McDonald's quality.
But yeah, no, I get it. So it's like you go anywhere and it all tastes the same. But like when it's like when they're upcharging for it, then it's like yeah.
I have a few more stories about this place.
Okay.
So one thing, so we had these really heavy, if you ever been to like a breakfast place, you have like these big plates, because usually it's like your 2 eggs and ham and whatever and bacon and all. And So the plate, he would basically charge us $5 if we broke a plate, which is crazy. I've worked in a lot of restaurants where when you break a plate, you don't pay, or maybe like $1 or $2 if you break a lot of plates.
$5 if you break
His excuse was the plate is $10. They're expensive, nice plates, so you had to give him $5.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, he would say you had to give him $5. Another thing that he did, so you were not allowed to eat on your shift. So sometimes like I would start at 7 and finish at 3. So sometimes I remember I would be so hungry, ravenous during the shift that I would just open up those little packs of peanut butter that you give, when people butter their toast with like peanut butter and jam. And I would just eat like 2 spoonfuls of peanut butter and like run back out. Oh my God. But another thing that he did, so he didn't give us, a lot of restaurants, what they do is they give you kind of like a family meal or a staff meal. It's usually a sandwich or like spaghetti, but they usually feed you a little bit during the shift because you're running around all day. They don't want you to get out and like take lunch off and go outside to eat.
Yeah.
But for him, what he would do is, sometimes you are punching things on the computer and let's say they want a salmon eggs Benedict and you accidentally put in ham eggs Benedict, whatever. And then it comes out, you're like, oh my God, it was a salmon eggs Benedict. And the boss would just be like, bon appetit. So he'd be like, well, I guess that's your lunch. But and then the eggs Benedict, let's say was like $15 and you'd basically have to give him half, which is $7.50. But yeah, this place, it ended up sometimes when I go back to visit like friends who used to live there and things like that, and I see that it closed down, I'm like, good. You sucked.
I can't believe.
I do think after I left, like a lot of people were reporting it because they apparently got like always an inspector in, and my flesh mother was like, you should report him. You should do it. And I don't know.
Oh my God, do it.
I didn't know where to go. I didn't want the hassle. Fair. I hate calling things to complain. I will just suck it up.
Okay, when I said that I reported my place too, like my mom did it for me.
Mommy!
So I didn't know what to do either. I get it. But I was just like, I told her the stories and she was like, I think we need to report this place. And so, I don't think she would have reported it if I hadn't said like, okay, yeah, report it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think like I've had some of the best camaraderie here because you just see people that, they don't eat at home. They eat every day at this place because it's like less than $8 in the morning and then they come for lunch. And it's always the same stuff. And like they all kind of know each other and you kind of know them and they ask about your day and like you just know the regulars. And I really do. Yeah, like I really do. And then sometimes you get a regular in that you haven't seen in forever and you're like, what is going on? What have you been up to?
You quit this place. You did not get fired from this place?
I quit this place, yes.
Yeah.
Because actually I got a job at the place under it, but we'll talk about it after.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Let me think if there's any more stories I had about it. Just really fun stuff. I remember I bought a pedometer to like count my steps and I would be walking in a shift sometimes 20,000 steps. Because it seems like nothing when you're walking to the far section. But if you have a table in the far section by the window, you go see them 7 times, hi, would you like more coffee? And then if the restaurant is empty, you come up to the table, you're like, so what are you guys up to today, huh? Nice summer day. Where are we going? What's going on? You know me, I'm a talker. I'm a moocher. I'm like, so where are you guys going today, huh? What's going on? Talk to me.
Being like that